Want to 10x your growth? Discover how only 3 growth hacks in 10 days can change everything. Welcome to the 10-Day Growth Hacking Challenge with your host, Nader Sabri. Today we are here with Shamimi Chowdhury, who is knocking the ball out of the court when it comes to mindset and the development of entrepreneurs. But what's more interesting is how lonely the journey of entrepreneurship can be. For those of us who've been through it, know exactly what this is about. He's addressing that by being able to provide, at least a way of dealing with that void through mindset and other development tools that are helping entrepreneurs not to feel alone, but also to feel supported through the process. Unfortunately, these are some of the softer situations related to entrepreneurship that are overlooked. Before we get started, and welcome Shamim back on board, we are here using the Growth Thinking Design Methodology book. If you want to do what we're doing here, this is your answer. Shamim, welcome aboard. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
It's been a bit of a break, but I'm glad that we've reconnected again.
Fantastic. Yeah, those things happen. And that's interesting because part of what you do is actually helping people address some of those things, right? Mental health is one of these big things that we see it all over the place now. You can't really turn into the news without hearing about mental health or mental health for entrepreneurship. And it's interesting because, and I'd love to get your thought on this, especially with how you plan to address this, but there's all this great information about it. I find very little solutions that would point blank tell me here's where you can go get some help. It's all just a lot of talk. That's my view on it anyways, but that's just me. Give us a little bit of background before we get started, if there has been any updates on hack number 1 before we jump into our conversation, and then hack number 2.
Sure. So just to summarize, the hack number 1 was all about getting attendees for joining our platform, joining our community, and that we've made a lot of progress on that now. We've launched our webinar series called Let's Reflect. It's a storytelling platform. We're getting engagement from a number of individuals from different backgrounds. What's really interesting is we're getting people that are entrepreneurs already that are struggling to make their startups a success, but as also we're getting people in the corporate world that have been dabbling about the idea of going to entrepreneurship, and now they are taking interest in these kind of workshops and webinars.
So you're building up your database, right? So the attendees, you've got a database building. Awesome. Any numbers you can share with us? That's of course non-confidential, but just to give us a sense of the growth from the minute you implemented hack 1.
Yeah. So right now we have about 100 members, active members.
Fantastic.
And that number is going to grow because we've seen already growth in just a short space of time, and because of that traction, it's going to help us continue with that momentum.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Listen, when people hear 100, they think that's oh, dude, that's so small compared to my goal, but 100 is better than none. And 100 is an excellent place to start with. And in such a short period of time to accumulate 100, I think is a brilliant thing. It's an excellent platform for you to get started on. And that, I guess, shifts us to hack number 2. Before we jump into hack number 2, though, with your permission, of course, we can talk about it an hour later. I'd love to get your feedback on when it comes to the mental health kind of atmosphere, when it comes to changes, when it comes to the entrepreneurial space. You want to talk about that now or after the hack?
Yeah, we can talk about it now. I think it's a really relevant topic to discuss about. One of the biggest concerns is they lack a coach, right, or a mentor, right, and as a result of that advisor, right, to help them through this transition. And that's essentially what it is. They're so used to being an employee that they don't understand what it means to be the CEO or the founder or co-founder of a company. And it's a shift. It's a complete shift in mindset. Yep. And when people are trying to create that shift on their own, they struggle, right? Yep. And they struggle for multiple reasons. It's not so much because they don't have what it takes, right? And that, unfortunately, that's what enters their mind. They believe that they don't have what it takes. But what they lack is actually clarity, right? Clarity of vision, clarity of strategy, clarity of what is the next step, right? And they always think about the end goal, their vision, to the point where it's so far away from where they are now, and they find it so hard to actually take the next step to move to the next,
100%. Yeah.
to project themselves, really.
I find it interesting, and for those tuning in, if they go back to, of course, the kickoff, and of course, for more information about Shamimi, you can click below how to reach out to him. But if you go back to our kickoff video, we talked about a very interesting clarification towards what you do as well, which you've actually touched on here. And just as a reminder to the audience that, there are two types of entrepreneurs: there's voluntary and non-voluntary. And Shamim's aspect in the sense of his story and the sense of who he addresses are what we call involuntary entrepreneurs, people who've become entrepreneurs because of other circumstances that have put them in a situation that they're not able to retain another job or a job that is good enough. I mean, the labels can just go on, but have decided to go into entrepreneurship, but on an involuntary basis. And so their challenges are dramatically different. On top of that, probably the first time in history that I've seen probably more involuntary entrepreneurs enter the world of entrepreneurship than ever before. It's always been there, but the volume of it, I mean, thanks to the pandemic, that being, of course, and I think you're in an ideal situation, that being in, with the pandemic, mental health problems, entrepreneurship, and non-voluntary entrepreneurs. I think it's amazing. Thanks for that input. I wanted to I know you're in this space, so I see a lot written about it. So I'd love, thank you for sharing your opinion with us. So let's head over to hack number 2. Tell us what it is, what has happened, what kind of results you got, what's next.
So hack number 2 was all about creating our content for our signature program, the Mindful Startup. So just to elaborate, the Mindful Startup is a program that takes you through from beginning to end in multiple stages. And the first element was, the mindset, right? As an entrepreneur, do you have the right mindset? Are you embracing failure? Are you, sharing your story? Are you, developing that story to the point where not only does it create a powerful story, but a powerful you? And how are you going to take that, extend that to your idea, and then to your launch and to your growth? And how does that propagate? So right now we've been focusing on, we've finished building our content for the mindset aspect. And we're in the process of now recording and getting our content out into our platform, available to the masses.
Fantastic. So for those tuning in, like, one of the important things about this hack that may not be very visible, as you so becoming a thought leader in any space, you need to have your what we call your knowledge domain sorted out. Knowledge domain is essentially taking your domain, breaking it down into subjects, subtopics, and then subtopics, and then being able to develop that domain of knowledge and then deliver that information in, of course, an entertaining way in today's world and in a compelling way so people can absorb what you have to offer. The challenge with creating this domain key is always like, if someone enters at a certain point, maybe not at the very beginning of it, how would they interact with the remaining of the knowledge that you provide? And it's something that's highly overlooked when it comes to thought leadership and the development of influence in general. And so how do you shift somebody who comes in at, say, level 4, which they can enter into, but how do you get them back into 1, 2, 3 and jump them forward? And so there's some complexity to that. And I think since you've mapped it out in this hack, this is going to play a crucial role. I do challenge you to ask yourself those kinds of questions, because we've gone through this before. Somebody enters at one point, how do they get into the remaining? If they enter in another point, one at the beginning or end, how do they come to the others? And so it's collectively being used in the most effective way. Of course, low friction consumption of the knowledge is super important. We've talked about that, I think, in our kickoff or hack 1, which we want to start using TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram to start delivering content, because the world consumes content in 15, 30, and 60 seconds, all the way up to 3 minutes, which is the max. And that's on, in the world of TikTok, which is amazing, because if you can get someone in 15, 30 seconds or 60 seconds, they will give you the remaining of their 3 minutes. How do you educate people in 3 minutes? That's the challenge you're looking at, right? That's how you're going to take that knowledge domain and turn it into that. So have you given any thoughts to some of these things, or do you have you solved some of these things in this hack? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, what we're actually doing is we're developing a system that enables people to realize where the bottlenecks are, right, within their startup. Now, if you think about it in an onion, the core, deep in the core is the mindset, and then beyond that is the idea, and beyond that is the launch of your startup, and beyond that is the growth. Now, depending on, you're quite rightly, you've got people involved in different stages of their startup. They could be completely, without an idea. They could be with an idea, but they are clueless about what to do next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they have an idea of what they need to do next, but they're struggling in the launch phase, or they're struggling in their growth stage. Now, when you look at it from that perspective, in the onion way, you look at it from the layers, one after the other. So if you're in your growth stage and you're struggling to create your 2.0 version, or the alpha instead of your beta version of your solution, then you need to be looking at what is it that was wrong, or what could have been done better with your launch. And then you start taking one step later,
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about, okay, does the idea itself need to pivot, or do you go one step further and think about, are you addressing the right problem in the right way with your mindset? Are you not collaborating with the right individuals to make it work, right? Are you embracing failure to the point where you can learn those lessons to the point where you can actually create a 2.0 version? So there's so many aspects, so many channels, so many paths that you can take. And so that's why we're creating that system in place that will enable.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've hit on like the most important triggers that would affect the mindset, especially of a new entrepreneur. I mean, serial entrepreneurs are very different. It's interesting because here in the challenge, we get to see a spectrum of entrepreneurs from beginning to guys who are exiting, guys who've exited multiple times, guys and girls, of course, people who've come in corporate and then have, built a few failures. And so anyways, so we see the whole spectrum, and it's so interesting because some of these aspects of the mindset very dramatically vary on the type of entrepreneur, and the fact that you're focused on the involuntary entrepreneur, and especially the first time involuntary entrepreneur. I think that crystal clear niche that we defined at the very beginning, I think is going to serve you very well, because as you address these trigger points and you're all focused on just that one point, like, as a volunteer entrepreneur, what does the following mean and how to overcome it, versus a serial entrepreneur, which is very different. How they would deal with resilience, and you've touched on some of these things, would be very different. With a serial entrepreneur that we see in this challenge, resilience is kind of something like they kind of walk on water. I mean, I know this is an over exaggeration, but you get what I mean. It's kind of like, okay, well, it happens. I move on to the next thing, and they just keep going with it. For a first-time entrepreneur, it's more dramatic in a sense of like the emotional impact. And it goes to some of the things that you triggered earlier, like I'm not good enough, or I can't do it, and all these things that just kind of overtake, which is not true. It's actually part of the process. Entrepreneurship brings out the best of your capabilities and unlocks potential that nothing before has done for you. Education hasn't done it. Your friends around you haven't done it, and the corporates you work for haven't done it, because they've all given you limitations and conditioning, not in a bad intention, but ultimately the beauty of an entrepreneur is now you are in a limitless space and you define it. And that can be a scary thing, especially for non-voluntary entrepreneurs. That's a scary thing because they've had so many things designed and kind of developed and systemized for them. It's almost kind of like a plug and play, for lack of better terms. Anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on it. That's amazing. Okay.
I completely agree. I just wanted to add to that, the fact that you have effectively like emotional triggers, right? If you think about three key emotional triggers, the one which is you've lost your job, right? That triggers you to the point of, what do you do next? Do you go look for another job, or do you start shifting into entrepreneurship and start with your own idea? And it's happened with many people I've known, including myself. And that's where that involuntary entrepreneur comes into, right? And then you've got the voluntary entrepreneur, which is the one that is dissatisfied with their job. That's the emotional trigger for them. Right. So or not so much the job, but they're dissatisfied with their career in general. They're not happy with what they've achieved. They haven't got that fulfillment, and they want to move on to the next thing, the next project. And then you got the third emotional trigger, where they've tried to be an entrepreneur and they failed. Right. And then that's something else entirely. But at least they were a volunteered entrepreneur, and they tried and they failed, and they want to do better. Right. They want to succeed.
That's a whole new ballgame. I completely agree with you. Yeah, that is a whole, that's where the resilience and all that comes into play. But I mean, again, I'm really happy with the clarity, and I commend you for having the courage to go down that route, because it's not an easy one. It's a tough one, but highly required, especially with the mental health capacity thing. I know it's a different story, but given that that's kind of like, I don't want to say it's like the hot topic of the day, because it deserves a lot more than that, obviously, that it seems to be a trending issue because it just keeps coming up. And especially because I think a lot of people are going back to work physically, not just, virtually. And so virtually brought its own anxiety. Coming back to work is bringing its own anxiety. And so this anxiety and issues that come with it are just incredible. So my hat goes off to tackling these things. And I look forward to seeing a lot more of this because I can see this helping a lot of people, man. Hat goes off to you on that front. So, okay, so that's hack number 2. Anything else you want to share with us about the results related to hack number 2 before we move on?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Very much.
Awesome. So guys, that's Shamimi Chowdhury. He is shaking up the space of helping involuntary entrepreneurs bridge the gap between unemployment and being able to become an entrepreneur and being super successful at it by providing information, training that triggers some of the challenges that you will be facing, but will work with you hands-on. Incredible offering. Check him out below. You can go below to learn more information about Shamimi. You can go to our kickoff video to get a bit more in-depth understanding of his story and what he's doing. Before we tune out, so you don't forget, whatever we do here on the challenge comes from the growth thinking design methodology. If you want to do what we're doing here, is right here in the book. Shamimi, I'll see you in the next video in hack number 3. Good luck.